Good evening, and welcome to Point of View, our weekly program dedicated to exploring challenging contemporary issues. Tonight we delve into a deeply divisive question that sits at the intersection of public safety and individual rights. Should gun owners be required to undergo mandatory mental health screenings? Joining us to debate this complex topic are two distinguished guests. Dr. Ben Carter, a public health advocate, argues in favor of such screenings as a necessary safety measure, and Ms. Laura Evans, a civil liberties attorney, contends that these measures could infringe upon constitutional rights and prove impractical. Each will present their opening statements, followed by rebuttals, a moderated discussion, and concluding remarks. We aim for a thorough and respectful exchange of perspectives.
Thank you, Sarah. I believe that implementing mandatory mental health screenings for all prospective and current gun owners is a crucial and responsible step towards enhancing public safety in our communities. It's not about penalizing responsible gun owners, but about acknowledging that gun ownership is a significant responsibility with potentially lethal consequences if mishandled. Research indicates a connection, albeit for a small subset of individuals, between certain untreated severe mental illnesses and an increased risk of violence, including self-harm and harm to others. Screenings would aim to identify these high-risk individuals, not to broadly stigmatize mental health conditions, but to intervene before a crisis occurs. We already have precedents for screenings in other sectors where public safety is paramount. For instance, airline pilots and commercial truck drivers undergo health and psychological evaluations. Surely, the responsibility of owning a device designed to be lethal warrants a similar level of due diligence to ensure the owner is psychologically fit at the time of purchase and during ownership. These screenings are not designed to be a barrier to deny rights to the vast majority of citizens. Instead, they should be viewed as a preventative health measure, a layer of due diligence aimed at preventing foreseeable tragedies. The objective is to create a system that is fair, evidence-based, and respects privacy, while prioritizing the well-being of the entire community. I acknowledge the complexities involved in designing and implementing such a system, but the potential to save lives to prevent even one tragedy makes it an imperative we must seriously consider and work towards. It's about adding a thoughtful, medically informed safeguard into the process of acquiring and maintaining firearms.
Thank you, Sarah. While I appreciate Dr. Carter's concern for public safety, a concern we all share, I must strongly oppose the proposition of mandatory mental health screenings for gun owners. Such a measure, I believe, would be a significant infringement on fundamental constitutional rights, most notably the Second Amendment, which guarantees the right of the people to keep and bear arms. There is a real concern among law-abiding citizens that these screenings could become a pretext for disarming individuals based on subjective or evolving criteria, effectively creating a barrier to a constitutional right. Furthermore, the privacy implications are immense. Mental health information is profoundly sensitive and personal. Who would store this data? Who would have access to it? The risk of data breaches, misuse of information, or unauthorized access leading to discrimination in other areas of life is substantial and deeply worrying. Then there's the sheer impracticality and questionable effectiveness of such a system. Who defines mentally unfit for gun ownership? The potential for vague, overly broad, or politically motivated criteria is a serious threat to fairness and due process. Mental health is complex and nuanced. It's not a simple pass/fail test. Moreover, a screening offers merely a snapshot in time. An individual might pass a screening today, but their mental state could change significantly weeks or months later due to life stressors or the onset of a condition. It's also a fact that many violent acts are committed by individuals who have no prior diagnosis, or who would likely not be flagged by standard screening tools, especially if they are adept at concealing their state of mind. Finally, and crucially, mandatory screenings risk further stigmatizing individuals with mental health conditions. This could discourage people from seeking help when they need it most, for fear of losing their rights or being unfairly labeled. Our focus should be on enhancing access to voluntary, affordable, and quality mental health care for everyone, and robustly enforcing existing laws that prevent prohibited persons from acquiring firearms, not on penalizing and potentially discriminating against millions of responsible gun owners.
Ms. Evans raises valid points about rights and privacy, which are indeed paramount. However, it's important to remember that most rights are not absolute and often come with responsibilities, particularly when they intersect with public safety. This isn't about an outright ban or disarming citizens wholesale. It's about establishing a reasonable qualification standard, much like we do for driving or practicing medicine. Regarding practicality, the challenges are not insurmountable. With careful planning, systems can be designed with stringent privacy protocols, using encryption and secure data storage, accessible only to qualified medical professionals under strict legal frameworks. Definitions of mentally unfit for firearm possession would need to be narrowly defined, focusing on specific evidence-based conditions known to significantly elevate risk, developed collaboratively by medical, legal, and ethical experts. And while no system is perfect, and a screening may not catch every potential threat, it serves as a crucial preventative tool. Much like seatbelts don't prevent all traffic fatalities, they significantly reduce risk and are considered worthwhile. As for stigma, if we frame this as a public health and safety issue akin to vision tests for driving or health checks for certain professions, rather than a punitive measure, we can work to mitigate that stigma and encourage a culture of responsible health awareness. It is about proactive prevention, not retroactive punishment.
Dr. Carter speaks of public safety, and while his intentions are good, the assumption that these screenings would directly and significantly reduce gun violence is, I believe, an oversimplification. Gun violence is a multifaceted problem, with roots in socioeconomic factors, criminal activity, and systemic issues that screenings alone cannot address. We also need to consider the immense burden such a system would place on millions of law-abiding gun owners. This includes financial costs for screenings, time taken, and the potential for errors in assessment that could wrongly deny someone their rights. There's a genuine fear that this could be a slippery slope. If we mandate mental health screenings today based on criteria that could be subjective, what's to stop future administrations from broadening those criteria or implementing even more stringent controls that further erode fundamental liberties? Instead of creating new, potentially flawed systems, we should focus our resources on robustly enforcing the laws we already have. This includes improving the existing NICS background check system to ensure all relevant criminal records and adjudications of severe mental illness that result in legal prohibitions are included. Furthermore, promoting access to voluntary mental health services, destigmatizing seeking help, and investing in community-based violence prevention programs are far more likely to yield positive results without infringing upon the rights of responsible citizens. This is about practical solutions that work, rather than measures that sound good but may ultimately prove ineffective and discriminatory.
Thank you both for those insightful rebuttals. Let's move into our discussion segment. Dr. Carter, I'll start with you. Dr. Carter, critics, including Ms. Evans, argue that defining, quote, mentally unfit for gun ownership could be subjective and lead to discrimination. How would you ensure criteria are fair, objective, and narrowly defined to prevent misuse?
That's a critical concern. The criteria must be developed by an independent panel of leading psychiatrists, psychologists, and legal experts, based on robust clinical evidence. They should focus on conditions that demonstrably impair judgment or impulse control to a degree that poses a clear and present danger if combined with access to firearms. For example, active psychosis, severe suicidal ideation, or specific delusional disorders. The definitions must be transparent, subject to public scrutiny, and include a clear appeals process for individuals who are flagged.
Ms. Evans, if not through mandatory screenings, what specific actionable measures do you propose to address the intersection of firearms and potential mental health crises that could lead to violence beyond current laws?
Beyond robustly enforcing current laws, which is often not done effectively, we need a multi-pronged approach. Firstly, significantly increase funding and accessibility for voluntary mental health treatment across all communities, especially underserved ones. Secondly, implement red flag laws carefully, ensuring due process, allowing temporary removal of firearms from individuals adjudicated by a court to be a danger to themselves or others. Thirdly, promote educational programs on safe gun storage and awareness of crisis intervention resources. These empower families and communities, rather than creating a potentially discriminatory system.
Dr. Carter, a follow-up. Considering the significant number of undiagnosed mental health conditions, how effective can a screening system truly be if individuals are not already within the mental health care system or are adept at concealing their conditions?
This is a genuine challenge. No screening system will be infallible. However, universal screenings at the point of purchase, and perhaps periodically for renewal, would cast a wider net than relying solely on existing diagnoses. Even if it identifies a small percentage of previously undiagnosed high-risk individuals, that intervention can be life-saving. Moreover, the process itself can raise awareness and encourage some individuals to seek help, even if they initially approach it as a requirement. It's one layer of protection among many, not a panacea, but a valuable one nonetheless.
Ms. Evans, a question for you. Given that other rights, like driving, are subject to health and competency evaluations for public safety, such as vision tests or assessments for epilepsy, why should firearm ownership be entirely exempt from similar considerations, especially when the potential for immediate harm can be so significant?
The comparison to driving is often made, but there are key differences. Driving is generally considered a privilege, subject to regulation for its safe execution on public roads, whereas the Second Amendment codifies a fundamental right. Furthermore, the evaluations for driving, like vision tests, are highly objective and directly related to the safe operation of a vehicle. Assessing mental fitness for gun ownership is far more complex, subjective, and prone to error or bias. The potential for misuse and for unfairly denying a constitutional right based on such subjective assessments is significantly higher, making it a very different proposition from checking eyesight.
In conclusion, mandatory mental health screenings, when carefully designed and implemented, represent a reasonable and common-sense measure to enhance public safety. This isn't about undermining rights, but about fostering responsible gun ownership and taking proactive steps to prevent tragedies where we can. It acknowledges the profound responsibility that comes with owning a firearm. We have an obligation to balance individual liberties with our collective responsibility for community well-being and safety. Screenings are not the sole solution, but they are a vital tool in a comprehensive strategy to reduce gun violence. I urge us to move forward with courage and thoughtfulness, to implement systems that can protect lives, understanding that prevention is always preferable to mourning preventable losses.
To summarize my position, mandatory mental health screenings for gun owners represent a significant overreach. They are unlikely to be truly effective in preventing gun violence and pose substantial risks to civil liberties, privacy, and the principle of due process. Our efforts and resources should be directed towards proven methods, diligently enforcing existing laws, properly funding and expanding access to voluntary mental health treatment, and ensuring that those who misuse firearms are prosecuted to the full extent of the law. We must protect our constitutional rights from measures that, however well-intentioned, could lead to a system that unfairly penalizes law-abiding citizens and further stigmatizes those dealing with mental health challenges. Let us focus on solutions that are effective, equitable, and uphold the freedoms we cherish, rather than creating new barriers that are fraught with peril.
Dr. Ben Carter, Ms. Laura Evans, thank you both for your articulate and passionate contributions to this very important discussion tonight. You've clearly illuminated the core tension we face: how to best ensure public safety while vigorously protecting individual constitutional rights when it comes to firearm ownership. We hope this debate has provided our audience with valuable perspectives to consider as this conversation continues in our communities and legislatures. Thank you for joining us on Point of View. Good evening.